a number of things that I've heard from people in the Pentagon, that the buzzword in the secret of secrets in the Pentagon is the Sumerian gods are returning, and that's what they're referring to as that whole area that Peter's
Wow.
Can you repeat that again, just in case anybody missed it? The buzzword
in the Pentagon, in the military circles that are in the know about the cover-up here, they kind of, in whispered tones, talk about the return of the Sumerian gods. And they're talking about the what we would call aliens or fallen angels returning into the Middle East, into Old Sumer area.
The Anunnaki.
Well, could be.
Greetings, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. Today, I'm going to go into part 2 of my Revelation video. Now, one of the things that I said in the first part of the video is that the book of Revelation is a book of prophecy, and it's a book of propaganda. But in this part, I'm also going to show that the book of Revelation is a book that talks about things coming from and going to space. Now, as that verse from Luke states, that there'll be signs in heaven. Okay, heaven, to the primitive man was the sky or space. So this would be any astronomical event that could have been either prophesied or predicted, or anything that would be artificial in nature that comes down from heaven. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the prophecies. Okay, so we're now at Revelation 10:1. And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. Now, what really jumps out at me when I read this is the whole pillars of fire, the feet or legs, pillars of fire. And the first thing that actually pops into my mind when I look at this through modern day eyes is these are the jets of something. Now, when you're talking about an angel, you're looking at something with wings. Because, I mean, aside from, if you really look into the description of angels in their natural form, they're nightmare fuel. There are several videos out there, you can look them up, that where they talk about what angels actually look like. But for most part, the depiction of an angel is something with wings. So what would have wings and two jets of fire? Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is the space shuttle. But if we are going in order, which we've already seen that things can be taken out of order, if this is supposed to be the time of the tribulation, the space shuttle has already been decommissioned. Now, if we're taking things out of order, those that are in the UFO community, they've actually looked at some of the footage that has been recorded during the various space shuttle missions. And there's some pretty interesting things that they've seen and they can't explain. If that's something that interests you, those are out there. You can look at those. But that's not what I'm getting into here. But if we're going to go with the timeline, if this is supposed to be during the tribulation, uh, not the space shuttle. So the next thing that came into my mind was the Falcon Heavy. But the Falcon Heavy doesn't exactly have wings. So what could this be? Well, one of the things that we know when we had the space shuttle in operation, not only was it doing missions for NASA and things like that, but it was also doing missions for the Air Force, the United States Air Force. And these were usually classified, national defense and things like that. But they lost the space shuttle. The space shuttles were decommissioned, and so they no longer had that. Until they commissioned Boeing to make this. This is the X-37B. It's classified as a space plane. It is unmanned. I mean, it's a small version of the shuttle. And you can actually see a guy, standing right here, and this gives you the, a comparison. The space shuttle was huge. But this thing's tiny. Unmanned, completely and totally remote controlled. Now, there's one interesting thing about this, is when it does go up, first of all, its mission is classified. We don't know what it does up there. And second of all, its mission is years at a time. I mean, if I remember correctly, the last time this thing went up, when it came back, 2 years had elapsed. So 2 years up in space. What is it doing? Now, one of the heads of the project, he was interviewed, and of course he was sitting there saying that, mission is classified, it's essentially top secret. But he did say that what he could say was that they were doing experiments. Okay. Regardless of prophecy, regardless of anything like that, this is something that should concern us. Because they are doing experiments that have to be done off the earth, basically away from people, done by a robotic, autonomous vehicle in space. Are they working with radiologics? I mean, are they working with nuclear material? Are they working with biological material? What is this thing doing? Okay, so let's get back into the prophecy. If the X-37B is this mighty angel that John's seen, and we get back into the prophecy, and of course it talks about different things, but one of the things that it says, and the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again, and he said, Go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. And I went unto the angel and said unto him, Give me the little book. And he said unto me, Take it and eat it up, and it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. Okay, so we have this little book, or in some interpretations, little scroll. And in your mouth, it's supposed to be sweet. But in your belly, it becomes bitter. Well, we have an expression today. And that expression is a bitter pill to swallow. And what that means is something that is very unpleasant, but must be accepted. So the whole idea of something that's sweet in your mouth, would be something that, yeah, at first it sounds great, but when you swallow it down, then you realize that, oh my, this isn't good. But because it's fact, because it's truth, you have to accept it. So, what if, while the X-37B is in space, doing its experiments or whatever it's doing, it has been in contact with something or someone, and it has the evidence on board to prove that we are not alone, to prove that we have been visited, to prove the Anunnaki. Now, the other thing that the prophecy said, all the way at the bottom down here, is it said, "And he said unto me, Thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings." In other words, this information has to be disseminated to the people. But because of whatever rationalization that the U.S. government and that the world government at large, whatever their reason for holding back information that we're not alone, that's the reason why they're not disseminating this information to the world. But for those that have basically been following some of the stuff that's been going on out of the Pentagon, we are getting essentially what would be called a soft disclosure. It's not full disclosure. The governments haven't come right out and said, hey, we're being visited by extraterrestrials. The UFOs that you see flying around, yeah, they're extraterrestrial spacecraft. Blah, blah, blah. And they don't say UFO anymore. There's negative connotation to that. So they use the word, the nomenclature UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena. But they have removed the stigma. Now, if you see a UAP, you're supposed to report it. And people aren't going to think you're a tinfoil hat wearing crazy person. You're supposed to report it. You're supposed to document it. I mean, let's face it, most everybody has a cell phone nowadays that they took willingly. And they can hold it up and they can take video. Granted, you're not going to get the best video. But if they have that video and they have radar evidence and they have all kinds of things, then it is more than likely that, yes, this was something that needs to be investigated. But we're getting this soft disclosure because eventually either this information that has been collected either by the X-37B or any other sources is actually going to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt the existence of extraterrestrial craft in our skies. Or, and this is something that I think is going to happen within the next year, amateur astronomers who are using their telescopes to look out at the cosmos is going to see the Armada. And that's what it's going to be. The return. It's not going to be, horses or whatever that it talks about in the Bible, and we'll get into that a little bit later. No, it's going to be spaceships. And they're going to be huge spaceships. And you're not going to be able to miss them. If you're looking at, out at the stars and everything, you're going to see these massive things coming into our solar system. Now, we're looking at, stellar flight. We're looking at, flying through a solar system. So they're not going to use any form of faster than light or wormhole or whatever. They're going to basically be using conventional rocketry, propulsion, whatever. So they can only move so fast. Honestly, I kind of think that the Armada is out beyond Jupiter. And it will be coming, to Earth within the next few years. That's my own personal belief. So, that's the mighty angel and the little book, in my interpretation. Okay, remember, things coming from and going to space. Okay, so here's something else that could be going into space. Then this is okay, Revelation 11:3. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. Okay. Now, when it comes to the old school interpretation of this, not looking through modern day eyes, a lot of people believe that the 2 witnesses are the return of those 2 individuals that you read about in the Bible that were taken to heaven. They didn't die. They were just taken up into heaven. And that's Enoch and Elijah. Okay, Enoch, it just says that, he lived so many days and then God took him. And Elijah was taken up in a chariot of fire, which a lot of people in the UFO community say that chariot of fire, well, that was a UFO. That was a flying saucer, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, the whole idea of the wheels within wheels, which is, how it's kind of described, chariot of fire, wheels within wheels, flying saucer. But these 2 individuals were taken up into heaven. They didn't die. They were taken physically into heaven. So it's believed that those will be the 2 witnesses. But then, when I seen this news report, it hit me. It's like, hey, there are the 2 witnesses. And that news report is this. SpaceX to send people to the moon. Now, this hasn't happened yet. The Crew Dragon, relatively recently has only just been completed. But what it was is 2 fairly wealthy individuals, private citizens as far as we know, paid millions, and I think it was something like $50 million a piece, to SpaceX to basically purchase their passage on board the Crew Dragon to go to the moon. Now, I don't know if they were going to land on the moon or if they were just going to orbit the moon. But the interesting thing is these would have been, or these are, we still haven't heard anything about them, and we don't know who they are. They didn't give the names. We don't know who these people are. But they're private citizens, supposedly. And so that means, they are not under any form of regulation from the government. So anything that they collect, video, images, anything like that, they don't have to censor it. They can just release it to the world. Now, it talks about these 2 witnesses will be clothed in sackcloth. Okay, I think what this is, because these are wealthy private citizens, what this actually means is that they can't be bought. They could still be threatened, and in fact, they do. We get into that further into the prophecy. But they can't be bought. The government can't come up to them and say, hey, we'll give you so much money if you censor whatever you bring back. Because hopefully these two private citizens are all about, hey, the world needs to know this. But they could still be threatened bodily. And that is one of the things it says here. And it says, Revelation 11:7, and when they shall have finished their testimony, in other words, they come back and say, hey, this is what's going on, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them. So they will be bodily threatened. But are they actually going to die, or are they just going to be sent to Guantanamo Bay? They're just going to be made to disappear. Because we get further into it, and it says that they come back. So, the two witnesses, in my interpretation, are these two individuals that, and again, it still hasn't happened as far as I know, that are supposed to go on the Crew Dragon to orbit the moon or even land on the moon. Now, we do know that NASA is working on the Orion spacecraft, which is supposed to be the new Apollo. It's going to be the lunar lander. They're wanting to put boots on the moon again. They're actually wanting to establish a base on the moon. They're thinking about bringing in private companies to go ahead and start mining the moon. And then also they're wanting to build what they call the Gateway, which is going to be essentially another space station type thing, kind of like the ISS. But it's going to be sitting in between the Earth and the moon, making it easier to transport people to the moon, and then also as a jumping off point to head to Mars. Okay. Now, we get into the next part of the prophecy. Revelation 12:1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now, what's nice about this? This is one of those types of prophecies that, it was predicted, and we knew it when it was going to happen, and we knew that it actually happened. Granted, this is still another interpretation, but it's the interpretation that, seriously resembles exactly what it's talking about. And what this is this. And this happened in 2017, September 23rd, 2017. And of course, that is the year that the tribulation started. Now, what we see here is it says once in every 7,000 years. So this is a celestial alignment that happens every 7,000 years, like clockwork. Okay? We have several of those. It's like we know Halley's Comet comes back every 75 years, so things like that. You get your orbits, you get your alignments. Okay? So this is not necessarily a prediction. This is not something that just, somebody, this is going to happen in the future. No, this has happened in the past, many times probably. So they knew it was going to happen again. Especially if they, for however way that they would have tracked it. But they knew it was going to happen, especially the Anunnaki. They have the long lifespans. They know when things are going to happen if it's cyclical. And that's what this is. This alignment is cyclical. Okay, so what do we have here? We have Virgo. We have the woman. The constellation Virgo is clothed with the sun. Okay, so the sun is 93 million miles away from Earth. The stars that make up Virgo are like billions of miles away. Okay, so it's perspective. Okay, the whole idea that the sun is behind Virgo. Well, that's not literally possible. But from perspective, you have the sun behind Virgo. Now, Virgo's foot is close to the moon. Get the moon down here. And it says that she will stand on the moon. And on her head will be a crown of 12 stars. Okay, so when it comes to crown means royalty. Another symbol that usually signifies royalty is a lion. And so we have the constellation Leo. But Leo only has 9 stars. And we're supposed to have a crown of 12. Well, here's another part of this alignment. Mercury, Mars, and Venus will be situated to where they look like they are in the constellation Leo, thus giving Leo 12 stars. Now, what does this signify? I mean, when you look at the prophecy, you get into a bunch of other stuff. You get, the woman is with child, and as if she was going to, there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Okay, I'm going to get into that in a little bit. I'll explain kind of what that is. And yes, if you look at it through that interpretation, kind of makes sense, especially with things going to space. But this is what really is confusing when you start looking into the interpretations here. Revelation 12:4, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it is born. Okay. The whole idea of a third part of the stars of heaven being cast down to earth, literally, this is not possible. If we take it from the idea that they were stars. The balls of burning gas billions of miles away. Thank you, Pumbaa. So no, that's not possible. But what could be possible is this. This is a Starlink satellite train. For those that know what SpaceX has been doing for the last several years, they've been launching missions of satellites up into space that is going to give internet to the entire world. I will get into that here in a moment because that is very relevant. Okay, so what if the stars that John was seeing, that he thought were the actual stars, billions of miles away, but were in fact satellites? And if something were to happen, now, we know that China has what are called satellite killers. They are actual satellites that are equipped with various weapon systems that can knock out enemy satellites. Or if we were to have a large solar flare, something that would just wipe across the planet, wouldn't actually do anything to the planet itself, but all the satellites that are in orbit, or not all of them, but quite a few of them, their guidance system would be knocked out and they would deorbit. They would actually fall to the ground, cast to Earth. So that's what John could have seen. He could have seen the satellites. Okay, now, this next part I'm going to go into extensively. Because when I read this, and looking through modern day eyes, I realized just exactly what it was talking about. I was hit by a ton of bricks. I literally fell out of my chair. I was floored, and I stayed there for a long time. This epiphany was so strong. Now, what this part of Revelation, when it comes to the old school interpretation, a lot of biblical scholars, they say that, this is talking about the Antichrist and the false prophet, or it's talking about nations or the church or something along those lines. But when you look at it through modern day eyes, and I'm going to show you this, it puts a whole new perspective on this part of the prophecy. Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the names of blasphemy. Okay, so John, when he supposedly wrote the book of Revelation, he was on Patmos Island in Greece. Now, what Patmos was, this was at the time that the Romans controlled, most of the world, the known world. And when you were an instigator, not so much that you needed to be executed, but you needed to be removed from society to keep your views and your teachings and things like that away from the rest of the public. It's kind of like prison. It was a penal colony. Patmos was a penal colony. This is where they put you. And so that's what happened. So it says that he stood upon the sand of the sea. Okay, so it's an island, so there would be sand. Now, he's having a vision, or he's having some sort of a remote viewing. So the way I see it is he's standing on the shore, and basically the view that he sees, he's looking out at the ocean, and then it comes rushing in at him, and he sees what's on the other side of the ocean. And if you look slightly northwest from Patmos Island, the first landmass you come to is the United States. And the first area of the United States that you come to is Florida, in the region known as Cape Canaveral. And he saw a beast rise up out of the sea. So before he even sees the landmass, he sees something, and it looks like it's rising up out of the sea, because you've got the water, and of course, after the water, you've got the land. But before he even sees the land, he sees something rising up, and it looks like it's rising up out of the sea. And of course, at that particular area where you're coming to, if you fly northwest, Cape Canaveral, you have launch pads. Or you have this. Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. And you've got these beautiful rockets standing straight and tall. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. Okay, well, let's first of all come back here to, your crowns, your horns, and the names of blasphemy. this isn't a really good picture, but some of these rockets have antenna, either coming out of the nose cone or setting off to the side. They're coming out from the side and then going straight up. They have antenna, horns, and of course, in the prophecy, it doesn't say crown. In the prophecy, it says diadem. Okay, so a diadem can, if you actually interpret it, it means to come together, or something is brought together. The other thing, though, that a diadem is it's essentially a circlet. It's not a full crown. It's like a circlet, and then there's a jewel that sits in the middle that lies on the forehead. That's another one of the... But if we look at the nose cones, because it's a different color than the rest of the body, that could have been seen to John, his primitive eyes, as a diadem. Now here's the kicker. What do we name our rockets? Atlas, Saturn, Titan, Apollo, Mercury, Orion. What are these the names of? I mean, if you're looking at a monotheistic belief and you're looking at a one God and the name of that God, and you have all these other gods, these are Roman gods, Roman and Greek gods. These would be blasphemous to call these things these names. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. Okay. When artists have tried to depict what this beast is supposed to look like, we get things like this. Okay, you got the body of a leopard, even though this leopard doesn't have the feet of a bear, because that's what it says. It says, and I saw, the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. So, you have these various artist depictions, but if we look at this, okay, you see these right here? These are what is called telemetry marks. Now, when the rocket goes up, it has to reach a certain speed in order to, it's called breakaway velocity. It has to reach a certain speed before it can leave orbit, or leave the gravitational pull of Earth to get into orbit. Okay? So, they have to be able to track how fast this thing is going. Well, they use something similar to what a police officer uses that setting up a speed trap. They use the radar gun. And basically they aim the laser of the radar gun, they aim it at those telemetry marks in order to be able to tell how fast the rocket is going as it goes up. To a primitive eyes, the body of a leopard and the feet of a bear. Now, honestly, I would think that it'd look more along the lines of the feet of an elephant. But if John had never seen an elephant, then he couldn't say that it was the feet of an elephant. But there is something that is fairly common in Greece, and that's the Serbian bear. And if we come down here, oh, where'd it go? Again, I thought I had everything all set up properly. You get the foot of the bear. look at the engines of a rocket. To primitive eyes, would that look like the foot of a bear? Again, I would think it would look like an elephant, but since he might not have seen an elephant, the closest that he had was the bear. Now, here's something that really annoys me when it comes to the artist's depictions of this beast. It says the mouth of a lion. You know, here you see this where it's the head of a lion. It doesn't say the head. It says the mouth of a lion. Well, the mouth of a lion just looks like the mouth of any cat. And of course, we've already said the leopard. But it's not talking about the look. It's talking about the sound that comes out of the lion's mouth, which is the roar. And when a rocket takes off, it roars. And I saw one of the heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Now we're going to get into that, because we get into well, first of all, let's get and it says, and he opened his mouth to blaspheme against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. Anytime we send a rocket, anytime we send any form of a spacecraft, satellite, anything like that into the sky, we are blaspheming God, according to, primitive belief, because the sky and everything above the sky was the realm of heaven. So anytime we send anything up there, we are blaspheming God. And what does NASA do? NASA sends things up into space. Okay. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. And he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Okay, the dragon is the key point here. Okay. Now, this individual, if you've ever seen him, and I'm not trying to, diss him in any way, shape, or form. I'm not trying to insult him. But if you've ever seen him, he looks kind of weird. Revelation 13:12. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. If the first beast is NASA, who has been doing NASA's job? SpaceX. SpaceX has been doing NASA's job. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from the heaven on the earth in the sight of men. The Falcon 9, first orbital class rocket capable of reflight. And if you've ever watched either live or the footage of, if you've ever watched the Falcon 9 return to Earth, it comes down on jets of fire. He is calling fire down from the sky. And in full sight of men. I mean, how much footage is out there? People have recorded that all over the place. I mean, I don't want to say that everybody's seen it, but I'm quite sure most of the world has seen the Falcon 9, because they were the first one to do it. SpaceX was the first one to make the reusable rocket. Okay, this is one of the things that I wanted to point out about the first beast when it talks about the wound. It says, which had the wound by a sword and did live. Okay. What does a sword do? And of course, they don't actually say sword down here. They actually say knife. But either one, what do? They cut. The wound that the first beast took was its budget was cut. And the reason why its budget, and because its budget was cut, the second beast, SpaceX, got to do NASA's job. All right. And then here's the kicker. If you've watched my Mark of the Beast video, at the end I told you what I thought the Mark of the Beast was now. I told you it was your cell phone. Revelation 13:15, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now, I don't know about that whole killing part, but the key here is that he gives life unto the image of the beast. What is SpaceX doing? Remember I told you about that satellite train? That's Starlink. To make it to where you can have internet all over the world. And that means, if you've got a computer, if you've got a laptop, if you've got a tablet, if you've got a cell phone that can receive Wi-Fi internet signal, he has just given life to the image. Now, let's talk about the image. The whole idea of worshiping the image, because it talks about that several times, to those that worship the image. Okay, imagine this. You've got a congregation in a church, and they are holding their Bibles, and their heads are bowed in prayer. Now, look at an auditorium or a lecture hall where you have a lot of people, and they all are holding their cell phones and their heads are bowed down looking at their cell phones. They are worshiping the image. They're praying to the image. What's that image? That's irrelevant. We don't know what John's seen. They could have been FaceTiming with each other. They could have been playing a video game. And some of those video games are pretty violent and gory and everything like that. And John would have seen that and been like, oh my, that's horrific. Things like that. That's irrelevant. It's the whole idea that they are bowing their heads, worshiping the image. And SpaceX is given the ability for the entire world to do that. Now, there is one other thing that SpaceX is doing, and it's only been announced just recently, and this is also another way that he's giving life to the image, making it to where it can speak. SpaceX is innovator in AI technology. They're self-driving Teslas. They use a very sophisticated artificial intelligence in order for it to, determine where it's going to go and how it's going to drive. That AI is going to be re-engineered and used in a robot. Elon Musk has already announced, he's actually shown what the robot is going to look like, and he said it's going to have the AI in it, and that's supposed to happen sometime next year. So again, he's giving life to the image. Alright, I'm going to talk about one more thing. Remember, this is things coming from and going to space. And what I'm going to talk about now is what is known as New Jerusalem. Revelation 21:10. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and shewed me there shewed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. Okay, so something huge is going to come down from heaven. This is a spaceship, folks. And of course, he describes what it looks like. You get the stones most precious, jasper, clear as crystal, things like it. He's seeing all these probably lights on this ship. And of course, this is also where we get into the idea of the streets of transparent gold. And we get into the gates made of one pearl and things. These are things that, John doesn't understand what he's seeing. He's thinking these things are jewels, but they're not. They're whatever it is, lights and tubing and everything like that you would see on a spacecraft. And now we get into Revelation 21:16, and it says, "And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed, 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal." Now, when you first read that, you think cube. Seriously, when I first read that, I'm a Trekkie. I like Star Trek. And when I first read that, I was like, holy crap, it's a Borg cube. But there's another thing that you can use that particular measurement for. You can use that as a pyramid. Now, I'm going to use a pop culture reference, but it's relevant. For those that have watched either the movie or the series or both, Stargate. Stargate is taken directly from the ancient astronaut hypothesis and almost directly from the Anunnaki theory. Now, for those that know the series, they know about the system lords. These are the gods. These would be the Anunnaki. And their ships are pyramids. So New Jerusalem, when it comes down, that's what it is. It's going to be one of these huge pyramid ships. Now, more than likely, when this thing comes down, this is going to be after the return of Thoth, aka Jesus, or whatever his name is right now. This is going to be after the battle. This is going to be after everything's all said and done. This is going to be when the new King of Heaven, and for that we have to get into, and this is something that I've showed many times. This is basically the Return of the Gods. This was written by Wes Penray. It says the new king and the second coming. It said sometime in the 1400s AD, and we usually use CE. I don't use the old school. Okay, the old king Anu stepped down. After finally had made a decision he was proud of. His successor would be one of the most unexpected of them all, Nanar, son of Namur the Enlil. Okay, Enlil, or Namur, is his actual name. But Enlil is Yahweh. That's Jehovah. That is the I Am, alright? Nanar is his oldest son, and Nanar is also known as Allah. Now, I am not, rationalizing or justifying, Islam. I'm also not insulting them. Allah has not always been the King of Heaven, but he is now. And of course, when he first took over as King of Heaven, King of Nibiru, yeah, he probably did want to be worshipped as a god. He wanted to flex. He wanted to exercise that power that he now had. But according to A.R. Borden, and I've talked about him in the past, that kind of mindset is no longer there. They know they're not gods. And that's one of the things that's going to happen when they finally return. Is they are going to inform us that they are not gods. They are not supposed to be worshipped. Hopefully what's going to happen after they deal with Marduk, after they deal with the systems and mechanisms and things like that Marduk set up, they are going to re-educate us. First of all, they're going to let us know we're going to have to find our own way. We're going to have to find out what we truly believe when it comes to God, divinity, the meaning of life, things like this. Because what we have now is basically a legacy left over from when they first came to Earth and declared themselves gods, which they know was wrong. So it's my hope that they're going to come here, they're going to re-educate us for that. They're going to educate us for actual space travel. This is going to be the true space age for humanity. I mean, a lot of people think that, back in the 60s and the 70s, that was the space age. That was us going into the space age. No, it wasn't. To be in the space age would mean that we'd be interstellar. We're lucky if we can get past the freaking inner planets. I mean, yeah, we've got the Voyagers, and they're out past the solar system, but they're unmanned. And then, of course, we've got rovers on Mars. But you have the Dragon. You have Elon Musk himself sitting there saying, hey, we're going to send you to Mars. We're going to send 1 million people to Mars, and they're going to colonize. That's what he said. In fact, that's one of the reasons why he started SpaceX. In an interview, that's what he said. The whole reason he started SpaceX was to get people to Mars. Now, we've already been informed that we have roughly 1,000 years. And when we go into the prophecies, you have what is known as the millennial reign. This is after the battle, one of the battles, I guess. It's after they, Satan is bound with chains, and you have the 1,000 years of peace. And it's during those 1,000 years is where we're going to be educated. But we have that because Nibiru is going to come back around. It's going to come back around in its orbit. And this time, it's going to get close to Earth. And it's going to devastate the surface. Now, it's not going to get real close. Those that have watched my videos from the very beginning, my very, very first video where I was talking about the Nibiru phenomena. The whole idea that people thought that Nibiru was in our skies and things like that. It's never going to get that close. But Earth will be at aphelion, which means it's farthest away from the sun in its orbit. And while it's that far out, Nibiru is going to come in, and it's going to get close enough to where it is going to devastate the surface of the planet. We have to be ready to get off the planet and to at least save a remnant of humanity. And that's all they're worried about. They made a promise the last time that Nibiru, according to Sitchin, devastated Earth, and that was the Great Deluge. And they made a promise that that would never happen again. Not necessarily the devastation, but allowing mankind to be almost extinct. So it's not that they're going to stop the devastation from happening. They can't. It's a celestial event. It's just going to happen. But they can save a remnant of mankind. And those will be the chosen. But I'm going to put all the links for everything that I've talked about in the description. Various videos, various articles, things like that. And I want you to look at these things, and I want you to see through modern day eyes. And that's the key. When these prophecies were written, they were written with primitive eyes, and without the understanding, and without the vocabulary that we have today. But all these things are supposed to, be prophesied to happen in the future. So we have to look at it through modern day eyes. And that's what I've done. And that's what I've tried to show. But all the information is going to be there. Look for yourself. Draw your own conclusions. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. Enjoy.